friends, family, and the void that are my followers. So in my excessive excitement, I just spent 15 minutes throwing a bunch of links onto the screen, being a hyperactive, mind blown silly, and I didn't realize that I was not doing audio at all. But that's probably the best because I was absolutely all over the place. I just learned something new that is scary. It is scary. If you've never heard of it before, I'll bring it up real quick. It is bricks. Not the oops, that's not how you spell bricks. There you go. It is bricks. And here, Brazil, Russia, and India, and China. I'm not worried about Russia for the most part. They're gridlocked on Ukraine. So I'm not worried about that. But these two right here, India and China, I spent 10 minutes talking about how insane it is to see that type of alliance going on. Egypt is, oh shit. And seeing Africa and Egypt joining that is, this is insane. This alliance is insanely scary. It's, yeah. So I was just going on about the fact that China alone, they've been struggling for sure. I've been seeing that they are economically collapsing a little bit. I've been seeing that they're likely misreporting their population, but I also showed this. It is more likely China has closer to 900 million people as opposed to 1.4. And this is something that is based on, I was reading some statistics from, I'll have to review that video later, but there was some statistics where that was presented where, based on their food production and distribution, they are feeding or sending out money to feed, or not money, food, sending out food to feed 900 or so thousand, 800 or so thousand million, 800 million population, not 1.4 billion. The 500 million people that is a difference of is very significant and very noticeable. The data is just not there to support that large. However, I mean, 800 million is still a lot and more than double what America has. So even if they're not quite tied with India, the fact that India and China, the two largest countries in the world, mostly in population, I think India might be smaller in land mass, but it's been a while since I've looked at the maps for that. Regardless, China and India, the two largest populations in the world, are teaming up. That's insane. I was also talking about the political China. It's typically consists of these nations. China, Russia are considered the yeah this right here. India and China are have been considered to have India, China, and USA have been considered to have been orbiting each other on geopolitical superpowers for a long time. They are the three biggest countries in the world. They're the ones who are the most significant. When they start making moves, everybody else pays attention. Russia is not insignificant, but they're not significant either. Like they're something, but they're not a holy shit, what are you doing kind of country. China and India, they're the two where when they start doing things, everybody's watching for sure. China and USA and India. China, right, USA and India. Yeah, those are the three that people really look at. So seeing India and China team up is scary. And I just saw this, not that, this video. This video is the one that told me about it. Let me get it going back again. And I didn't agree at first, but the moment I saw bricks, I was like, holy fuck, he's right. It was necessary. The tariffs thing was necessary. Yes. I disagree on that. Just as a note, I got to the point where it said bricks, and I started shitting bricks, and so immediately I jumped in to do recording. So all of this is new information for me. So I'm listening now because this is insane, and I need to know this information because this does change everything. So I'm trying not to pause it. I'm trying to just listen. It's a 30-minute video, which is not too bad. So we're probably going to sit here and listen to most of it. It's only going to be minimum pausing. I keep scratching here because there's like this hair specifically sticking out that's just into my vision. I should shave. I'm at that point again. Regardless, though, focus. The It's literally causing me to shit bricks watching, finding out about this information. So I'm now listening with a fresh ear, just like everybody watching this recording likely is. Ads. Thank you.
That one aged like shit. Exactly the opposite happened where Russia, China, and Iran have all joined together in BRICS, and his push to enlarge NATO directly led to needless conflicts. NATO has also participated in notorious bombing campaigns in several nations in the Balkans, as well as completely destroying Libya, a country that once enjoyed the highest standards of living on the African continent, which is now a failed state. Through the United States military and NATO, Western countries were able to prevent any peer competitors from rising. The second method is through the West's domination of international institutions like the United Nations. Nations that sit on the UN Security Council hold the highest form of international power through their ability to veto resolutions. Any nation sitting on the Council can block significant actions such as military interventions, sanctions, or the admission of new members with a single no vote. The West has a majorly disproportionate influence in the Council, with the US, UK, and France controlling 3 of the 5 veto spots, despite accounting for less than 6% of the world population. Countries with much larger populations and economies, like India, Indonesia, and Brazil, have no permanent representation in the Security Council. As a result, the Security Council reflects the time in which it was created in 1945 and not 2025. This system has frequently been used to dominate the global south. For example, it's been used to block resolutions to end the embargo on Cuba, despite the entire world voting against it every year. It also runs cover for war crimes, repeatedly vetoing resolutions that call for ceasefires, and voting to make food a human right, where nearly the entire world votes in favor except the United States and its closest ally. The third and perhaps most crucial method is financial domination. After World War II,
Who's the closest ally?
human
Oh,
right,
Israel.
where nearly the entire world votes in favor except the United States and its closest ally. The third and perhaps most crucial method is financial domination. After World War II, the Allied powers met at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 to design the new global financial system. It was here that institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, were created. These institutions lend money to poor nations, often during financial crisis or for long term development projects. But they give them this money with a catch. In exchange for loans, these countries are required to implement harsh structural adjustment programs. These programs force nations to adopt economic reforms that are primarily designed to benefit Western corporations. To secure the desperately needed loans, countries are pressured to cut public welfare spending, manipulate their currencies, and remove restrictions on foreign investors, allowing corporations to extract profits with little oversight. As a result, these countries are trapped in a cycle of debt and dependency, preventing them from achieving real economic independence. This system ensures that poor countries stay poor while rich countries continue to thrive. However, beyond the influence of international organizations, the most significant form of American financial domination began in 1944 with the establishment of the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. This is what economists call the exorbitant privilege of the US dollar. It might come as a shock to many of you just how global trade actually works and how dominant the US dollar truly is. The US dollar is used in over half of the world's total trade transactions. For example, if you're a businessman in Germany looking to buy an industrial product from China, you might assume the transaction would be settled in euros or yuan, as those are the local currencies of the countries involved. However, that's not the case. Instead, the German buyer would first go to a commercial bank to exchange euros for US dollars. These Wall Street banks benefit by charging fees for currency exchange and cross border transfers. This process is a major revenue generator for the banks as they take a cut from every transaction. The
Yeah.
Chinese seller would then convert those dollars into yuan through a Chinese bank. This is incredibly beneficial for the United States because they get to act as a middleman even though they aren't adding any value to the transaction. Because the US dollar is so essential for global trade, demand for it remains high. Poor nations are constantly in need of
Mm.
US dollars to trade, which prevents them from strengthening their own local currencies. Additionally, these countries are often forced to export raw materials priced in dollars, meaning they have to accept low prices for their exports while paying higher prices for imports. This dependency on dollar based trade and debt keeps them in a role of raw material exporters, unable to develop diversified high value industries. Take Argentina, for example. The country's need for US dollars to import essential goods, pay off international debts, and conduct trade has led to a persistent shortage of dollars. This constant demand for foreign currency weakens the Argentine peso, causing inflation and economic instability. As the peso continues to lose value, the nation is trapped in a vicious cycle of poverty and worsening economic conditions. This ongoing crisis has forced Argentina to constantly turn to the IMF for bailouts. The country is by far the biggest recipient of bailouts from the IMF, with a whopping 23 to the tune of $177 billion since 1958. Argentinians rightfully blame the IMF for exacerbating their crisis by pushing through austerity on a country already suffering. With leftist lawmaker Miriam Bergman stating, "All past experiences with the IMF in our country have been terrible. Many Argentinians will not be able to retire." The IMF themselves admitted to screwing over Argentina, saying its policies failed to achieve the proposed objectives. Recently, the United States has bailed out the country to the tune of $40 billion due to the complete failure of the anarcho capitalist policies of its current leader, Javier Milei. Argentina's situation is not unique. This is the same case for many developing nations where the overwhelming demand for dollars in global trade obstructs their ability to strengthen their own currencies and achieve long term economic stability. When profits are made around the world, governments, central banks, and elites often reinvest their dollars back into the US through the stock market, US treasuries, or real estate because they see the US as a secure investment. Their reinvestment creates a feedback loop as global demand for US assets increases the demand for the US dollar. As a result, the dollar remains in high circulation globally.
Add.
What do you say when a Jewish boy is kicked on a New York City sidewalk?
Go away.
As a result, the dollar remains in high circulation globally, reinforcing its
No,
status
that's
as
not
the
what
de
you
facto
say.
reserve currency. At home in the US, the dominance of the dollar allows the US to do things no other country on earth could get away with. With a national debt approaching $37 trillion, the US can essentially print money without facing the immediate consequences that would send other nations
Right,
into
I
a
forgot to
currency
mention this.
crisis.
So one thing I didn't mention, I forgot to mention, I did mention during that 10 to 15 minute moment where I was not putting out any audio at all. One of the biggest things, while China has clearly been collapsing, they a lot of businesses have been leaving China. This has been clearly identified, like a lot of like Starbucks, McDonald's, a lot of other businesses as well. Their finance bubble finally burst. Not the finance, the real estate bubble finally burst in China. The they are still independently leading in a lot of significant groundbreaking innovations in technology and science. There are two major there are two major space stations out in space right now. There's the ISS, and then there's the Tiangong. The Tiangong is it's more focused. ISS, they do a lot of great scientific experiments, but it's very spread out and generalized. They're just openly doing experiments with not much direction. A little bit, but not much. Whereas China, theirs has been very focused. Their goal is clearly towards space longevity. They have recently broke ground with regards to the ability to synthesize fuel in space. I can't remember exactly what it was called. It's like turning carbon monoxide into carbon nitrate or something like that. But they through that innovation, they are now also looking at ways to synthesize other chemicals as well for things like oxygen production and things like that. And their ability to recycle oxygen in a space station, things like using plants and etc. Well, most of their work is around the basis of photosynthesis, and through that development, they're learning ways to uh, become more efficient. Their space stations, they can use their space better, they can spend more time in space, etc., etc., etc. So this is allowing them to develop the means for space exploration and even potentially colonizing other planets. And the only blessing here is that they're not being particularly coveted about it. They're kind of spreading the information out a little bit, so it is some of it is being decimated out to other countries such as America, thankfully. But the fact that they are doing this on their own, whereas the ISS has the combined power of multiple countries, is insane. China has been absolutely kicking ass when it comes to recent technology and developments. And part of why I was saying is it's so scary that China and India, two of the three most relevant countries in the fucking world, are teaming up. That's shit and bricks. That is the word. Shitting bricks.
This massive privilege could have been used to build America into a super utopia, easily providing every citizen with free healthcare, education, and a nationwide high speed
Go back a little bit.
world's primary reserve currency. At home in the US, the dominance of the dollar allows the US to do things no other country on earth could get away with. With the national debt approaching $37 trillion, the US can essentially print money without facing the immediate consequences that would send other nations into a currency crisis. This massive privilege could have been used to build America into a super utopia, easily providing every citizen with free healthcare, education, and a
No,
nationwide high speed rail network. Instead, America squandered its biggest advantage by spending that money on pointless wars and bailing out massive banks in 2008 and 2020. The
I don't
2022
agree with his
deficit alone cost
estimation
the
on
US
any of that right
$30 billion
there specifically.
with little to show for it except replacing the Taliban with the Taliban, creating ISIS, and completely destabilizing the Middle East. Any of these crises would have crushed another country's economy, but the dollar has allowed America to weather these storms. The dollar dominated system is used as a weapon against countries the US doesn't like as a form of economic warfare. Since the US dollar's role as the world's reserve currency is so crucial for global trade, denying a country's access to it through sanctions is incredibly devastating. This is done by cutting sanctioned countries off from Western banking and financial institutions, effectively isolating them from international trade. This tactic is
That's
used
kind
to
of
inflict
true.
misery for civilian populations in countries the US dislikes. The goal is often to create such unbearable conditions, including a lack of access to life
There were
saving medicine,
risks
that
with
the
Trump's
population will rise
tariff
up and
project,
overthrow their government and
but it
replace
was
it with one
absolutely
aligned with
necessary
US
because
interests.
we
Countries like
were.
Cuba, Iran, North
That's
Korea,
where
and
most of
Russia
our debt
are
comes from.
often mocked by the US for their poor
We
management.
were
When it is unquestionably
financing a lot of
otherwise,
other
the
countries,
world's
spending a
largest
lot of
trading
money on
partner
other
went to those
countries, and
countries to
not very
dominate
much on
global trade.
us, or not
They're
as
not just
much on
countries the
us.
US perceives as broken.
And
The US has
it
regularly
was
slapped
it was
sanctions on
becoming
the vast majority of
unsustainable.
the world's nations at some point.
And Trump
Currently, countries on the sanctions list
saw
include
that it was
countries on Earth,
necessary
Somalia, the
to
Central African Republic, and
change
Sudan. The
our
pretext of these
trade
sanctions is
balance.
the
We
US
needed to spend more
lecturing
money on
about freedom,
us
democracy,
and
and
bring
human
back
rights,
some of the money
while
we
the US
spent on
regularly
others.
violates and openly ignores international law.
There,
Understandably,
I don't
countries
support
like
most of
China
what
and the
Trump's
US aren't
doing.
perfect and have their
There's
own
a
human
lot of
rights
things, plenty of
violations.
things that
However, these sanctions don't
are
resolve
problematic.
anything except causing
I
unnecessary
absolutely
suffering and
believe
panic
that
among
when
millions of
Trump
people who have
first
nothing to do with these
tried
movements. And let's be honest,
I absolutely believe that when Trump first started running for president, it was one of those moments where he was getting canceled. He said something, and people were getting pissed at him, and he got kicked out of uh, the station that he was running his show off of. And he's basically turned around and says, "Well, f you guys, I'm gonna become president, and then we'll see what you say then." And so then he like had a hold my beer moment, went out, ran for president. Somehow it worked, which was insane. And he kind of blundered through most of that. Like he did some things and then he didn't do some things. Like I absolutely do enjoy the fact that he pulled a lot of money from different corporations, but at the same time, he also put in 10 times as much money into the military budget. Military does not need more budget, quite honestly. Being that I have been a soldier and I spent a month in a hotel when I could have where they spent almost $200 a night to put me in that hotel when they could have very easily put me in basic military lodging, which technically I guess costs $30 a night per soldier. I'm not sure exactly how the metrics for that pan out, but it was nearly a tenth of the price. Well, we said there, and I would have been perfectly fine. There's no reason why I needed a cushy, nice little hotel room all to myself. Hell, they could have bumped us up, three or four of us, to a room, and that would have been better. But no, they got a lot of us got individual rooms. Uh, some people got bumped up two to a room, but A lot of us got individual rooms. I got in an individual room many times for a month at a time. That's insane. So the military squanders, and they do that specifically because if they don't spend the budget they have, they lose some of the budget. So they blow money on nothing just to keep their budget. So increasing their budget, they don't need that money. Not at least not the portions of the military I've seen. Like maybe R&D, I guess they could use more budget. I don't know, man. I don't know, but he increased it by a good he threw 10 times as much money as he saved from corporations. He threw it back in the military. So it was pretty crazy to see. And yeah, yeah. Trump, it was crazy that he became president, but he has done some things for sure that are undisputably positive. I kind of support the tariff project he did for sure.
The idea that the US actually cares about these human rights is bogus. The US will gladly work with any regime as long as they align with US interests. The US provides military assistance to 73% of the world's dictatorships. Sanctions are simply a tool to prevent any country that defies the US from developing. Unsurprisingly, outside the former colonial countries, the entire world is fed up with the system. The world has frequently voted to condemn the US frivolous use of sanctions at the United
I've been sick
Nations,
the past two
but the
weeks,
dollar's dominance and Western control over global
two
institutions
or
is
three.
rapidly
Like a
crumbling.
walking
That is where
pneumonia.
BRICS comes into play. On June 16th, 2009, BRIC was founded, consisting of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and quickly admitted South Africa to become BRICS. The founding members looked around at an unfair world system that did not reflect the true composition and interests of the world
That might be
population.
real.
By
I think
creating an
this AI
economic bloc,
generated, but that
these
might be
countries
real.
finally had the power to actually make a change. Every year, the bloc expands and
Okay,
it
no,
has
that's real.
already surpassed the G7 in most metrics. The official members have
Maybe.
expanded to include Ethiopia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Indonesia. And partner countries have expanded to include Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda, Uzbekistan, and Vietnam. BRICS is now the global majority.
Cuba's American, isn't it? Ah, thanks for that too. Ah, I didn't know that.
And partner countries have expanded to include Belarus, Bolivia,
Egypt is
Cuba,
kind of significant.
Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Nigeria, Thailand, Uganda,
Iran,
Uzbekistan, and Vietnam.
that's never
BRICS
good.
is now the global majority,
Power to Iran
representing
is no good.
56% of the global population. Of the top 10 most populous countries on Earth, BRICS compose 6 of the top 10 and 3 of the top 4. The
That's
founding countries and
insane.
members of the bloc have already far surpassed the G7 economies in terms of purchasing power parity,
Yeah.
not even taking into consideration the additional 15 members of the alliance. This gap is only set to widen as nearly all BRICS countries are experiencing rapid growth. Take a look at this graph comparing the growth rates of BRICS countries, shown in yellow, versus the G7 represented in blue. It's very clear where the wind is blowing. While
Ethiopia is
BRICS
that
countries are
big?
surging ahead, G7 growth rates are stagnating.
Wow.
This stagnation is largely because G7 economies are driven by finance and speculative bubbles rather than real industry. Western economies, especially the United States, abandoned industrial production decades ago and have become heavily dependent on the FIRE sector, like finance, insurance, and real estate. In fact, the FIRE sector now contributes about 20 to 21% of total US GDP, making it the largest single contributor among all US industries. But these sectors are not based in the real economy and are incredibly unstable and collapse every 10 years or so, as we have seen in the dot-com bubble, 2008 financial crisis, and 2020, to name a few examples. Meanwhile, BRICS countries hold the vast majority of industrial and raw materials capacity, making the West largely dependent on BRICS in a variety of critical areas. Rare earth minerals are the most important resource of the 21st century. Whether it be renewable energy, electric vehicles, or almost all forms of modern missiles and weaponry, you need rare earth minerals, and the BRICS alliance has a dominant 72% control of rare earth reserves. On top of that, even if the West has rare earth minerals, they have no capacity to refine them, as China alone controls 92% of all rare earth mineral refining, which is essentially a monopoly. For the West to develop their own industry to extract and refine these materials would take decades, so for the foreseeable future, the West cannot modernize or wage large scale warfare without China or BRICS. Also, China alone accounts for nearly a third of all manufacturing in the
That's
world at
outdated.
49%. And that number is expected to rise to nearly half of the world output by 2050. At the same time,
I
manufacturing
can see
exports
that.
of Western economies continues to fall. All of this goes to show that we are no longer in a unipolar moment. We have officially entered a multipolar geopolitical era where the United States is not the sole superpower, but one among many regional great powers. Every year, the balance of power in the world becomes more and more even. And here is an important thing to note: this alliance isn't anti Western or anti American. The goal of this organization is to dismantle the Western bias systems, not to create a new form of dictatorship, but a fair, equitable system where
Yeah, but
everyone
that's
plays
fucking
a role to
China,
play.
dude. That's China and
Unlike
Russia. They don't
large
give a
international
shit.
organizations like the UN,
They're gonna look
which
at
some have
themselves.
recently called useless, BRICS countries want to strengthen and make international institutions more powerful. They want to give much more representation at the Security Council to the Global South and reform or outright remove the veto power. The primary way BRICS countries are driving real change in the world is by ending the dominance of the US dollar and creating alternative financial institutions to challenge the IMF and the World Bank. This process, known as de dollarization,
I
aims
support
to balance
challenging the
the
World
trade
Bank for
between
sure.
countries using local currencies instead of the US dollar. While this may seem like common sense to avoid the use of a foreign country's currency as an intermediary, technological barriers have made it difficult until recently. The global financial network has long relied on an international trading system called SWIFT, which handles cross border payments and settlements. However, SWIFT favors the West, comes with high costs due to intermediaries, and has slow processing times, sometimes taking days to process payments. It's also not transparent, with hidden fees and difficult payment tracking. And most importantly, SWIFT depends on the US dollar, leaving countries vulnerable to being excluded if the US decides to shut them out, posing a major security risk. The US kicked out Russia from SWIFT and froze $300 billion in Russian assets at the flip of a switch. Regardless of what you think of Russia, this set off a major alarm in every non Western country, signaling the need to diversify away from the dollar. In response, BRICS countries are developing their own systems, like CIPS, or China's cross border interbank payment system. CIPS allows countries to use local currencies, bypassing the US dollar. Unlike SWIFT, CIPS directly clears and settles payments, offering instant processing. It's transparent, with clear fees and real time tracking, and operates 24/7. CIPS is also free from geopolitical pressures that affect SWIFT, making it a much more neutral option. Through enabling direct
It's not
communication
true,
between
but it's
central
okay.
banks, this not only improves efficiency, but also sovereignty, as it removes the need to rely on Western banks. This direct communication is a no brainer, but its adoption has been slow because it threatens the profits of Western banks. The erratic trade policies of Trump, including launching
This
tariffs
guy's
against the
definitely
entire world,
very clearly
have
very
accelerated this
pro
shift by
China.
undermining
That
global
that's
faith
okay.
in the US dollar. In the past,
It's the
when a
information
global
that's
economic
critical.
recession was coming, investors would fly to safety, increasing their holdings in US Treasury bonds as the dollar was seen as a reliable and secure investment. However, for the first time, we're seeing a divergence. Even as the stock market falls, demand for US bonds is not rising. Instead, countries are allowing their bonds to expire at higher rates, signaling
Good to see
profound
Japan's
loss of
rising a little
trust in
bit.
the dollar's stability and the security of US debt. The dollar has had the worst start to a year since 1973. Compared to previous years, it's at a historic low, having fallen 10% since the beginning of the year. Countries around the world are dumping their holdings of US Treasuries and investing in alternative assets like gold.
It's actually
China,
not.
historically the
Japan,
second
now that I'm
largest
thinking
holder of
about it
US
though,
Treasuries,
with
has
Japan's
massively
yen,
reduced their holdings.
I
These
think
countries are rapidly
last
expanding
year it
their
was at
use of local
120,
currencies in trade.
and
Currently,
last I
about
checked,
25% of trade
it's
within the
now
bloc is now
150
conducted in domestic
per
currencies,
dollar.
and that number is expected to rise each year. Already, 90% of the trade between Russia and China, as well as Russia and India, are being settled in local currencies. Countries like Egypt, Iraq, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and Malaysia are one by one signing agreements to conduct trade using their
Stupid
own currencies. In
Firefox
some
memory
cases,
leak.
this shift is effectively eliminating the US dollar from transactions altogether. Each signing of a new agreement represents another crack in the foundation of the US dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. More and more countries are bypassing the dollar in
Uh,
favor of local currencies and alternative financial systems. If you're liking this video so far, please take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And please check out my Patreon if you can. These videos take a lot of work to make. Also, please open a new tab or switch apps real quick and follow me on Twitter if you can at No Way No How. Thanks. Now back to the video. Trading in local currencies isn't the only way to de-dollarize. In fact, during the yearly BRICS
I'll just
conferences,
look it up
there
and
have
say
been
it.
discussions about creating a new currency to serve as an alternative to the
Nope,
US
I
dollar
think I can
for
switch it
clearing
here. No.
payments among BRICS countries. This currency could either be a shared BRICS digital currency or a basket of BRICS country currencies, allowing countries to bypass the dollar and settle transactions directly using their own units of exchange. There's also talk of a resource backed model potentially tied to valuable commodities like oil, gold, or agricultural products that would add real world value and stability to the currency. Such a move would be transformative for the world. If
Yeah,
you're traveling in a BRICS
I'm at
country,
55
you could use
now.
a fully digital currency that would
It's
instantly exchange
stabilized at
between the
this
central
point
bank of
though.
your home country and the countries
So
around you,
because it's been
saving payments and postage.
145
This would
to
be similar to
155
what
for the
existing
past
WeChat or Alipay systems
year and
on a
two
much
months now, I
smaller
think.
scale.
So
This
it's
would
I
also
think it's going to
completely
sit at that
eliminate the
point, which
need for
means it's gone
intermediary
down.
banks or currency converters,
Unfortunately, like
leading to faster and cheaper
what,
transactions. Now, remember the World Bank and the IMF we discussed earlier? Well, the
last
BRICS has
year
a
has been
response to that
around
too.
140,
BRICS has
150.
also established a bank that serves as an alternative to the World Bank and the IMF. Shockingly, in the 80-year existence of the World Bank and the IMF has always been led by a European, and the World Bank
Around
has
this
always
time
been
is when a
run by an
bunch of
American.
tourists went
As a
to
result, it's kind of
Japan.
ironic to call it the
So
World
that's
Bank when
probably
it's been
around
led
here.
exclusively by
Probably
representatives
why
from
it
one
improved a
country
little
that
bit,
makes
but
up about
yeah,
4% of the world
I
population.
think it'll be
They
fine.
have openly biased institutions towards the
It's
West, and that's where
stabilized.
the new development bank comes in. The NDB provides an alternative to these institutions and has a balanced governance structure in which all BRICS countries have equal voting rights. The NDB offers fair loans and interest rates without imposing the political and economic reforms or austerity measures that come with loans from Western
Like when I went,
institutions.
it was
The bank is
149 to the
specifically
dollar.
designed to help developing countries by funding projects focused on critical infrastructure such as roads, energy, and water, as well as sustainable development initiatives like renewable energy and social programs in healthcare and education. Unlike Western institutions, which often prioritize wealth extraction for foreign corporations, the NDB focuses on fostering real long term development rather than short term profit. One of the biggest forces uniting the global south is China's Belt and Road Initiative. As the world's largest economy measured in purchasing power parity and the largest economy in BRICS, China has used its excess capital to invest in developing the infrastructure of countries around the world. Compare that with the US, who use their excess capital to
To be clear again, though, China's real estate bubble
When you get a
recently
classic
burst
ride, you need tools you trust.
shortly after
Whether
COVID.
you drive it every day or only
2024,
take it out on
probably.
the biggest night of the year.
I'll look that up in a little bit.
compare that with the US, who use their excess capital to invest in endless war. The
This guy's absolutely pro China. Yeah, 2020 to now. Shortly after COVID, there was a couple of major real estate companies that have been funding buildings using previous buildings, basically printing money for themselves, so to speak, to continue perpetually constructing. That nothing actually backing it up, just purely moving forward, using money, not earning enough to sustain themselves, just taking more and more and more money to make more and more buildings. There's actually a recent phenomenon, Ghost City, not town, Ghost City phenomenon. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of buildings that were recently constructed that are just completely unoccupied. Nobody in it. There was also a lot of videos that I watched recently explaining a recent disappearance of population, like other towns and cities where populations were supposedly moved, and the towns are now ghosts, and nobody knows where those people went. And central cities, centralized cities, they're not growing so much, and that's why I expressed that there is a real possibility that China's population is probably closer to 800 to 900. On top of the statistics with regards to their food distribution, is just there's the data does not support China having 1.4, but again, it still remains that they're twice the size of America with regards to population. So yeah, it's It's not insignificant, but it's not quite as large.
Scale of this initiative is staggering. Since its launch in 2013, China has spent $1.3 trillion on projects across more than 150 countries. Often referred to as the New Silk Road, the Belt and Road spans across Eurasia and the global south, including ports, roads, airports, railways, high speed rail, hospitals, schools, cellular and internet infrastructure, smart cities, and massive renewable energy projects. Being at the
We'll give
forefront
that.
of a lot of these technologies like 5G, they're able to share these with developing countries.
China has been
Many
innovating
Chinese
like
ports, like
crazy.
Chansei Port in Peru, are fully automated with robots unloading and loading cargo. This cargo is either shipped across the Pacific or will be connected via a massive rail system built by China that spans the entire continent, linking ports all the way from Peru to Brazil. High speed rail systems have also been constructed in developing countries like Uzbekistan and
China
Laos,
found their breakout.
dramatically reducing
That
travel
is
times between
scary.
the countries and stimulating their economies. I too have actually personally rode the one in Laos, and it was fast, easy, and convenient. And it made me frustrated that countries like Laos and Uzbekistan have more high speed rail than in the United States, when we're supposedly the richest country on earth. In the future, China will complete the rest of the high speed rail network connecting all of Southeast Asia. This will have massive benefits for the economies, tourism, and most importantly, the peaceful relations between the countries involved. Now, look at this chart. Literally, every single one of the fastest growing countries is outside the West. And under BRICS, as their economies grow, they will have naturally complement one another, and the infrastructure will strengthen these ties diplomatically and economically. If you look at a map of each country's largest trading partner from the year 2000, the US was the biggest trading partner for the majority of the world's countries. Fast forward to 2024, and the situation
I do hope they call again. That was a virtual, some AI job filtering thing. They were calling like, oh, we need to get some information about you because we have this job that you sent an application for security analyst. It's like, oh well, I do want a job as security analyst, but now's not a good time. I'm like, okay, we'll call you later. I hope you do, but we'll see. Anyways, if I can do this,
has completely reversed, with China now the most important trade partner for the majority of world countries. The Western narrative often claims that China's actions are largest trading partner from the year 2000,
that's one
massive
those two times.
benefits for the
Okay,
economies, tourism, and most importantly, the peaceful relations between the countries involved. Now look at this chart. Literally every
I
single
should
one of the
probably
fastest growing countries.
increase the memory capacity of Kali Linux. Firefox is too much of a fucking memory bloat.
Trading partner for the majority of the world's countries. Fast forward to 2024, and the situation has completely reversed, with China now the most important trade partner
That's not true.
for the majority of world countries. The Western narrative often claims that China's actions are motivated by malicious intent, that they want something in return. And of course, they want something in return. What country in history has ever done massive projects for other countries out of charity? Everything is done for a reason. However, the difference lies in China's approach, which it calls win win diplomacy. They emphasize this concept frequently when discussing their intentions behind infrastructure projects. Meanwhile, the United States operates on a zero sum gain trade policy, where it believes it must always be the disproportionate beneficiary in any transaction. This is the current administration's logic in imposing tariffs on nearly every country in the world and views trade deficits as a problem that needs fixing.
Yeah, this is
During the
propaganda,
Biden and
100%.
Obama administrations, it wasn't much better, with them lecturing down
BRICS is
these
still a
countries
scary
as
concept,
problems
though.
to be dealt with and not treating them as equal partners. At the very least, BRICS offers Global South countries a new option, whereas in the past, they only had one choice
And
in the West. So, how's the US responded to the Belt and Road
you see the
Initiative?
video.
Instead
You
of
can check
offering
out
an
the video.
alternative, the West's response was
And
to
I'm not
spend
going to continue to
$1.4
struggle
trillion
with
dollars on propaganda to spread
Firefox here.
disinformation and discredit the Belt and Road
Come on,
Initiative
close.
worldwide. They've also pressured
It's
countries
taking
into
forever
not
for it to close.
participating in BRI. The truth is, the United States simply does not have the capacity to build the renewable energy infrastructure, 5G technologies, or rail networks that these countries need, let alone in the US itself. One of the biggest targets of misinformation about the Belt and Road Initiative has been Africa, but these claims have largely fallen on deaf ears. According to the 2025 Democracy Perception Index
Wait for it to close finally.
poll,
Come on. It's okay. I've seen enough of this stuff, so I'm
not
gonna
only does Africa
close
have
out all of Firefox or all of Kali Linux. BRICS. It's scary. It's relevant.